Rain hammered the rooftops of Kensington while Jay Mercer sat alone inside his cramped flat, counting money that still was not enough. The notes smelled of cigarette smoke and damp pockets. Half would go toward debts. The rest belonged to men far more dangerous than him. Outside, blue lights flashed somewhere beyond the estate, reflecting against rainwater gathered beside overflowing bins. Jay rubbed his tired eyes and checked his phone again. No messages from Ellie. For weeks, he had been running cocaine packages through Liverpool's side streets for the Walsh crew, carrying gym bags between Toxteth tower blocks, pubs, and abandoned garages near the docks. The work paid fast, but never enough. Every delivery pushed him deeper into debt instead of pulling him out. Interest stacked up. Favors stacked up faster. That was when another crew approached him. They promised better money for smaller runs. No threats. No beatings. Just quiet work moving product across rival territory. Jay knew the rules. You never switched lines without permission. In Liverpool's gang network, betrayal spread quicker than fire. But desperation drowned fear. His rent was overdue. Ellie kept asking questions. Loan sharks had already smashed his car windows 2 weeks earlier. So Jay started carrying packages for both sides. At first, nobody noticed. He moved carefully through crowded streets, changing routes daily, avoiding familiar faces. Yet lately, strange things kept happening. Cars slowed beside him at night. Unknown numbers called and stayed silent. Earlier that evening, a man in a grey tracksuit stared directly at him inside a corner shop before whispering into his phone. Now, close to midnight, unease filled the flat like leaking gas. Jay walked toward the kitchen window and parted the curtains slightly. Rain blurred the streetlights outside. Then he saw it. A black van rolled slowly onto the estate and stopped directly outside his building. His stomach tightened. The engine stayed running. 5 men stepped out wearing black jackets and balaclavas. "Oh God," Jay whispered. A violent bang exploded against the front door downstairs. Another followed. "Jay," a voice shouted. "Open the fucking door." Panic rushed through his body so hard his knees nearly collapsed. He looked around the flat helplessly, mind racing. There was no weapon. No escape through the hallway. Another deafening crash shook the building. Jay sprinted toward the bathroom while heavy footsteps thundered up the communal stairs. He locked the bathroom door, breathing so hard his chest hurt. The tiny window above the toilet barely opened, but survival forced strength into him. He shoved it upward and squeezed himself through, scraping skin from his arms. Behind him, his apartment door burst open. "Search the place," someone yelled. Jay dropped into the alley below and slipped hard against wet concrete. He heard smashing glass upstairs. Furniture breaking. Men tearing his life apart room by room. Barely able to breathe, he ran through back alleys until he reached the railway bridge near Toxteth. Rainwater dripped from rusted steel overhead while trains screamed somewhere in the darkness. Shivering beneath the bridge, Jay finally checked his phone. One new voice note waited from Ellie. His hands trembled as he pressed play. "They know everything." In the background, Jay heard unfamiliar male voices, a door slamming shut, and Ellie crying softly before the recording ended in terrified silence. The voice note replayed endlessly inside Jay Mercer's head while dawn crept across Liverpool in cold grey shadows. He spent the remaining hours beneath the railway bridge, soaked to the bone, staring at passing trains and trying to understand how everything collapsed so quickly. They know everything. Ellie sounded terrified. But terrified of who? By sunrise, Jay left Toxteth and disappeared into the maze of forgotten streets behind Kensington. He moved between abandoned flats, shuttered betting shops, and pubs where old criminals drank quietly before noon. The city suddenly felt poisoned. Every stare lingered too long. Every passing car slowed slightly beside him. Word spread fast in Liverpool's underworld. Jay switched lines. The accusation traveled through estates and back alleys like wildfire. Older gangsters shook their heads in disgust. Young runners whispered his name nervously inside corner shops. Even people uninvolved in the drug trade understood the danger. Switching loyalty between crews was unforgivable. It made everyone nervous. It brought retaliation. By evening, Jay entered a dim pub near the docks where he used to collect packages months earlier. Conversations died the moment he walked in. An older dealer named Mick refused eye contact while wiping glasses behind the counter. "You shouldn't be here," Mick muttered quietly. "I just need somewhere safe for one night." "There's no safe place now." Jay noticed two men staring from a booth near the fruit machine. One slowly shook his head as if warning him to leave immediately. Fear tightened inside Jay's chest again. He turned and walked back into the rain. Hours later, his phone finally rang. "Ellie." Jay hesitated before answering. "Jay." Her voice sounded exhausted and shaky. "Where are you?" "I'm home." "That's funny," Jay snapped. "Because 5 masked men somehow knew where I lived." Silence answered him briefly. "I didn't tell anyone," Ellie whispered. "I swear to you." Jay leaned against a graffiti-covered wall near an abandoned warehouse, breathing hard. Part of him wanted desperately to believe her. Another part remembered the voice note. "They had your phone," he said quietly. "I heard voices. They came looking for you earlier." His stomach dropped. "Who?" "I don't know. One of them slapped me when I said I hadn't seen you." Jay closed his eyes. Rainwater dripped from his hood onto the cracked pavement below. "You need to leave Liverpool," Ellie whispered. "Tonight." Memories surfaced suddenly. Ellie crying after late-night phone calls she refused to explain. Ellie asking strange questions about his deliveries. Ellie disappearing for hours without reason. Tiny moments he ignored because he loved her. Or thought he did. "You knew something," Jay said coldly. "No. You're lying. I'm trying to keep you alive." Her sudden scream echoed through the phone before the call disconnected completely. Jay stood frozen in silence. Across the city, another man studied his photograph beneath flickering fluorescent lights. Callum Doyle, known across Liverpool as Kaz, sat inside a backroom office above a gambling shop in Everton. Calm, sharply dressed, and terrifyingly unreadable, he listened while 2 younger gang members explained Jay's disappearance. "He's panicking," one said nervously. "Word is he's sleeping rough around Toxteth." Kaz lit a cigarette slowly. "And police?" "Nothing yet. That changes if bodies appear." The room fell silent. Unlike other enforcers, Kaz hated unnecessary violence. Fear worked better than chaos. But Jay's betrayal threatened business across multiple estates. Crews were already blaming each other. Panic spread faster than drugs. Kaz exhaled smoke toward the ceiling. "Find him quietly," he ordered. "Before this becomes public." Meanwhile, Jay wandered through side streets until he found shelter inside an empty flat above a boarded takeaway. The room smelled of mold and burned wiring. He collapsed beside the wall, exhausted beyond thought. Then his phone buzzed again. This time it was not Ellie. It was a news article someone had forwarded anonymously. Jay opened it slowly. A photograph filled the screen. Firefighters standing outside his destroyed apartment building while police tape surrounded the entrance. His pulse slowed. Then he read the headline. "Body found inside Kensington flat fire." Jay stared at the article in horror. According to police, a badly burned corpse had been discovered inside his apartment shortly after the attack. But Jay knew one thing with absolute certainty. When he escaped through that bathroom window, he had been completely alone. Jay Mercer barely slept after reading the article about the burned body inside his apartment. Rain battered the broken windows of the abandoned flat while police sirens echoed somewhere beyond the streets below. Every shadow felt alive. Every creak inside the building sounded like approaching footsteps. By morning, Liverpool already believed he was a killer. The victim's identity spread quickly across tabloids and social media. 17-year-old Connor Hayes, a teenage runner linked to local drug routes around Toxteth, had apparently vanished 2 days earlier. Reporters flooded the story with dramatic headlines beside photographs of Connor smiling in a school uniform years before gang life swallowed him whole. Police hunt gang murder suspect. Inside pubs and betting shops, people spoke Jay's name quietly now, like it carried infection. Gang leaders privately welcomed the chaos. Connor's death redirected police pressure away from larger operations and focused attention entirely onto Jay. A frightened courier made the perfect scapegoat. Disposable. Easy to blame. Easy to erase later. Jay watched coverage from an old television inside the abandoned flat, his hands trembling around a cigarette. "I didn't kill him," he whispered repeatedly, though nobody was there to hear it. But doubt had already infected his own mind. He kept replaying the night in fragments. The black van. The masked men. Smashing furniture upstairs. Could Connor have entered the apartment before the attack? Had somebody dragged the boy inside afterward? Nothing made sense anymore. His phone vibrated constantly with missed calls from Ellie. 12 calls. Then 16. Finally, a voicemail arrived. "Jay, please answer me," she said tearfully. "You need to listen to me before they find you first." He deleted it immediately. Trust no longer existed between them. As daylight faded, memories from childhood surfaced without warning. Jay remembered being 9 years old, sitting silently on dirty carpet while his mother screamed at another boyfriend through thin apartment walls. Needles scattered across kitchen counters. Men entering at strange hours. Police knocking at the door so often it stopped frightening him. By 13, older boys from Kensington estates already used him for deliveries. Small packages first. Then cash collections. Then drugs. One gangster named Leon used to place money directly into Jay's hand and say, "Nobody protects poor kids except us." For years, Jay believed him. Now he understood the truth. They had not protected him. They had built him into something useful. That evening, Jay left the flat wearing a stolen hoodie pulled tightly across his face. Hunger eventually forced him into a corner shop near Upper Parliament Street. While paying for food, he noticed the cashier staring strangely at him. "What?" Jay muttered. The cashier pointed silently toward the newspaper rack. Jay turned cold. A printed photograph of him covered the front page beside Connor's face. Murdered teen found in gang safe house. Jay abandoned the food and hurried back outside, breathing hard. Across the street, a tall man stood motionless beneath a bus shelter. Black coat. Hands in pockets. Watching him. "Kaz." Jay instantly turned away into side streets, heart pounding violently. But when he risked another glance seconds later, the bus shelter was empty. That night became worse. Back inside the abandoned flat, Jay discovered a photograph slid beneath the door. It showed him sleeping beneath the railway bridge 2 nights earlier. On the back, somebody had written, "You should have run further." Jay stumbled backward in panic. The next day, another message appeared spray-painted outside the building entrance. "We see you." Kaz never attacked directly. He hunted differently. Slowly. Patiently. Like he wanted fear itself to destroy Jay before violence ever touched him. Exhaustion soon blurred reality. Jay stopped sleeping properly. Every passing siren sounded personal. He imagined faces outside windows. Footsteps above ceilings. He even began hearing knocks that never came. Late one night, unable to bear the silence anymore, Jay finally checked his phone again. One new message waited from an unknown number. No text. Only a video attachment. Jay pressed play carefully. Grainy black and white CCTV footage appeared from inside his apartment building lobby. Timestamp: 11:42 p.m. The night of the fire. Jay watched himself leaving the building earlier that evening. Then his stomach collapsed completely. Minutes later, Ellie entered the apartment alone wearing her dark raincoat. And she never appeared, leaving again. Jay Mercer watched the CCTV footage 3 more times before rage finally overwhelmed confusion. Ellie entered his apartment shortly before the fire. No explanation could erase that image from his mind. By sunrise, exhaustion and paranoia had fused into something dangerous. He found her the following evening outside her cousin's flat near Wavertree. Rain mist drifted through the streetlights while Ellie walked quickly toward her car, hood pulled low across her face. Jay grabbed her arm before she could scream and forced her into the passenger seat. "Drive," he hissed. "Jay, please. Drive." Terrified, Ellie obeyed. They ended up inside an abandoned garage near the docks where rusted tools hung from concrete walls and cold air smelled of oil and seawater. Jay locked the metal shutter behind them before turning toward her with shaking hands. "You were in my flat," he said. Ellie's face drained of color immediately. "I can explain. You lied to me for weeks. I was trying to protect you." Jay slammed his fist against the wall beside her head. The sound echoed violently through the garage. "Connor Hayes died in there," he shouted. "They think I killed him." Ellie burst into tears. "I didn't know he was inside." "Then why were you there?" For several seconds she could barely speak. "Because they told me to go." Jay stared at her silently. Finally, Ellie admitted the truth piece by piece. Two men connected to the Walsh crew approached her days earlier after learning Jay had secretly switched drug lines. At first, they only asked questions about his movements, routines, and contacts. Then the threats began. They warned her that Jay had become a liability. "They said if I cooperated, they'd scare you and let everything end quietly," she whispered. "So you betrayed me." "I thought they only wanted the drugs back." Jay paced across the garage, breathing hard. Every answer created new questions. "What happened that night?" "They gave me keys to your flat," Ellie said. "I was supposed to leave the door unlocked so they could search the place after you came home." Jay felt sick. "But Connor was already there," she continued shakily. "He was hiding in the bedroom when I arrived." "Why?" Ellie looked down at the floor. "Because Connor wasn't just a runner." The silence inside the garage thickened. He was informing for police. Jay stopped moving completely. Ellie explained that Connor had secretly been feeding information about Liverpool drug routes to detectives for months. Some gang members suspected him already. Others believed he was stealing money. Nobody realized how deep the situation truly went until shortly before the fire. "They thought Connor gave police information about the shipments you were moving," Ellie whispered. Jay rubbed both hands across his face in disbelief. Suddenly everything became clearer and far worse at the same time. Connor's death was not random. Jay's betrayal simply created the perfect cover story. Now both gangs and police needed him silent forever. Elsewhere across Liverpool, Kaz Doyle sat inside a private office above a gambling shop, studying investigation reports spread across a wooden table. Something about Connor's death bothered him deeply. Too many people were nervous. Senior gang figures who normally ignored street-level violence suddenly held emergency meetings behind locked doors. Detectives appeared unusually careful during raids. Even police pressure seemed strangely controlled, almost theatrical. Kaz lit another cigarette thoughtfully. "Who was the boy talking to?" he asked one of his associates. "Nobody knows." "That's a lie." The associate stayed silent. Kaz understood then that Connor's information reached beyond local gangs. Powerful people feared exposure. Men with money, businesses, maybe even politicians. Suddenly Jay Mercer no longer looked like a simple traitor. He looked like collateral damage. Back at the garage, Ellie sat trembling against the wall while Jay struggled to process everything. "There's something else," she whispered weakly. Jay looked at her coldly. Ellie wiped tears from her face before speaking. "I'm pregnant." The words hit him harder than any threat. But her next sentence destroyed whatever stability remained inside him. "And I don't know if the baby's yours." Ellie's confession shattered the final pieces of trust holding Jay Mercer together. Long after she stopped crying, he remained silent inside the freezing garage, staring toward the rusted metal shutter while rain hammered outside. Pregnancy, betrayal, informants, corrupt detectives, everything had become tangled beyond understanding. By morning, Jay made a decision. If gangs and police both wanted him buried, he needed someone dangerous enough to expose them publicly. That name was Naomi Price. Naomi worked as an investigative journalist known across Liverpool for uncovering organized crime hidden behind legitimate businesses. She had exposed money laundering through bars near the docks 2 years earlier and received threats ever since. Jay remembered older gangsters mentioning her name carefully, almost respectfully. Using a borrowed phone, he contacted her anonymously. "I've got information about Connor Hayes," he said quietly. "And police corruption." The line stayed silent briefly. Where? The ferry terminal. Tonight. The Liverpool ferry terminal buzzed with cold evening traffic when Jay arrived wearing a dark hoodie and baseball cap pulled low across his face. Travelers dragged suitcases through puddles while ferries groaned against the docks beyond metal barriers. Jay spotted Naomi immediately near the terminal cafe. She looked older than he expected. Sharp eyes, grey coat, calm posture that suggested she was used to dangerous conversations. You look terrified, she said after sitting across from him. I probably should be. Naomi studied him carefully. Why contact me instead of police? Jay almost laughed. Because police are part of it. That answer changed her expression instantly. Over the next hour, Jay explained everything he knew. Switching drug lines. Connor Hayes hiding inside the flat. The fire. Ellie being pressured. Detectives quietly protecting certain gang operations around the docks. Naomi interrupted often with precise questions. Names. Locations. Dates. Jay answered carefully, though paranoia constantly pulled his attention toward nearby crowds. Every stranger felt threatening now. You understand what you're describing? Naomi finally asked. This isn't just gang violence. I know. She leaned closer across the table. Drug shipments entering Liverpool through dock companies. Cash cleaned through local restaurants and property businesses. Police redirecting investigations away from protected routes. If even half this is true, people with serious influence are involved. Jay swallowed hard. For the first time, he realized how small he truly was inside the machine surrounding him. He spent years believing gangs controlled the streets through fear and violence. But the deeper truth reached far beyond estates and alleyways. Money flowed through businesses, shipping companies, politicians, and men who never touched drugs themselves. Naomi opened a notebook filled with handwritten names and arrows connecting businesses around Liverpool's waterfront. Connor Hayes wasn't the center of this, she said quietly. He was just close enough to see something dangerous. A cold feeling spread through Jay's stomach. Nearby, hidden inside a parked vehicle overlooking the terminal, Kaz Doyle watched the meeting through tinted windows. He expected Jay to panic eventually. Run. Hide. Maybe beg for mercy. Instead, the young courier kept adapting. Kaz admired that. More importantly, Jay's desperation now pointed toward something larger than betrayal between rival crews. Too many powerful people seemed invested in silencing him quickly. Even senior gang figures appeared nervous lately. Kaz lit a cigarette thoughtfully while watching Naomi and Jay leave the cafe separately. For the first time in years, loyalty no longer felt simple. Hours later, Naomi drove through wet Liverpool streets toward her apartment with Jay's information stored carefully inside her bag. Traffic lights reflected red across rain-covered roads while she replayed the conversation repeatedly in her head. Then headlights appeared suddenly behind her. Too fast. A black vehicle accelerated violently through an intersection. Naomi barely had time to react. Metal exploded against metal as the speeding car smashed directly into the side of her vehicle, sending glass across the road in glittering fragments. Her car spun hard before crashing beside the pavement. Dazed and bleeding heavily, Naomi struggled for breath while distant screams echoed nearby. With shaking hands, she reached for her phone. Not emergency services. Jay. She quickly typed one final message and attached a small encrypted memory card hidden inside her coat pocket. Then she pressed send. Seconds later, another car door slammed somewhere outside. Heavy footsteps approached through the rain. The memory card arrived less than 2 minutes after Naomi Price's crash. Jay Mercer stared at the message while hiding inside a deserted terrace house near Everton Cemetery. The text contained only 3 words. Trust nobody now. Outside, wind rattled broken windows while distant police sirens echoed through Liverpool's sleeping streets. Jay inserted the card into an old laptop abandoned inside the safe house and waited nervously for the files to open. Dozens of recordings appeared. Audio conversations. Financial documents. Photographs of shipping containers entering Liverpool docks after midnight. Lists of names connected to local businesses, council offices, and police units. Jay clicked the first audio file. Static crackled briefly before voices emerged. Payments already sorted through the nightclub account. What about customs? They're covered. Another recording captured detectives discussing planned raids before they happened. Someone inside Merseyside Police was feeding information directly into gang operations. The deeper Jay searched, the uglier everything became. Then he opened another file. A familiar voice instantly froze his blood. "Kaz. We don't kill him yet," the enforcer said calmly during the recording. "Not until we know who Connor spoke to." Jay replayed the clip repeatedly. Hearing Kaz's voice through laptop speakers felt different from seeing him silently watching across streets. Colder. More dangerous. Like listening to a man discuss weather instead of murder. Hours passed inside the crumbling house while paranoia slowly poisoned Jay's thoughts. Every recording deepened his panic. Corrupt officers. Witnesses disappearing. Journalists threatened. Connor Hayes had uncovered far more than street-level drug dealing before dying. Now Naomi was probably dead too. Jay shut the laptop suddenly after hearing a loud knock downstairs. His body locked instantly. Another knock followed. Then silence. Heart hammering violently, Jay grabbed a rusted kitchen knife and moved slowly toward the staircase. Moonlight stretched across peeling wallpaper while the entire building groaned softly around him. Nobody stood downstairs. The front door remained locked. Jay backed away shakily. Soon the knocks started everywhere. Pipes inside walls. Windows rattling upstairs. Footsteps outside at impossible hours. Sometimes he swore he saw figures wearing balaclavas standing beneath streetlights before disappearing moments later. Sleep became impossible. Liverpool itself now felt hostile toward him. Newspapers called him a murderer daily. Online photographs of Connor Hayes spread beside headlines demanding arrests. Local residents whispered whenever Jay risked entering shops for food. Even criminals avoided him now. Isolation twisted his mind further each night. Meanwhile, across the city, Kaz Doyle sat inside a private meeting above a shipping office near the docks. 3 senior gang figures argued quietly around a polished wooden table while cigarette smoke clouded the room. "You told me Jay switched sides," Kaz said coldly. "He did. But that's not why Connor died." Silence answered him. Kaz studied their expressions carefully. For years he followed orders without questioning motives. Fear kept business stable. Violence solved problems quickly. But recently too many lies surrounded Connor Hayes. Finally, one older gangster sighed heavily. The boy was informing. "So kill the informant," Kaz replied. "Why frame Jay?" "Because Connor copied files before disappearing." Kaz narrowed his eyes. "What files?" Nobody answered immediately. That silence told him everything. Connor had uncovered information dangerous enough to threaten powerful people beyond the gangs themselves. Jay switching drug lines simply created convenient cover for eliminating both boys together. Kaz leaned back slowly, anger building beneath his calm expression. "You used me." "Nobody used you," another gangster snapped. "This situation protects everyone." Everyone except the dead teenager, Kaz thought. And perhaps Naomi Price too. Back inside the safe house, Jay continued searching Naomi's recordings until dawn approached. Most files contained corruption evidence and gang meetings. Then he noticed one final audio clip simply labeled Ellie. Confused, Jay pressed play. Street noise echoed faintly before Ellie's voice emerged clearly. "I can tell you when he changes routes," she whispered nervously. A man answered her. "We just need cooperation." Jay felt sick immediately. The second voice belonged to a detective. The recording date appeared beneath the file. 3 weeks before Jay ever switched drug lines. The recording of Ellie speaking with detectives replayed endlessly inside Jay Mercer's mind long after dawn rose above Liverpool. 3 weeks before he switched drug lines, she had already been meeting police behind his back. Whether she acted out of fear, manipulation, or betrayal no longer mattered. Every relationship in his life now felt contaminated. Exhausted and hollow-eyed, Jay spent the morning studying Naomi Price's files again until one detail finally stood out. Connor Hayes still had family alive. A faded report mentioned his mother, Sandra Wilkes, living alone near Bootle. Jay hesitated for hours before finally leaving the safe house after dark. Rain drifted through the streets again, coating empty bus stops and shuttered corner shops in silver reflections. Sandra's house sat at the end of a quiet row of worn brick terraces. One porch light glowed weakly through the mist. Jay nearly turned back twice. When Sandra opened the door, she looked older than her 50 years. Grief had hollowed her face completely. Yet when she saw Jay standing there trembling beneath his hood, she did not scream or slam the door. "You're him," she said softly. Jay lowered his eyes. "I didn't kill Connor." Sandra studied him silently for several painful seconds before stepping aside. "Come inside." The small house smelled faintly of tea and cigarette smoke. Family photographs covered the walls, including several of Connor as a smiling child long before gang life changed him. Jay felt ashamed simply standing there. Sandra placed 2 cups on the kitchen table. "Police already decided you murdered my son," she said quietly. "But mothers know when people are lying." Jay stared down at the untouched tea. "I never even met him properly." Sandra nodded slowly. "Connor talked about a man named Jay once. Said you weren't cruel like the others." The words hit harder than accusations. For the first time in years, Jay began speaking honestly about his own life. The debts. The drug routes. His childhood around addiction and violence. How older gangsters shaped boys into tools before they understood consequences. Sandra listened without interruption. "They destroy children differently," she whispered eventually. "Some die young. Others survive long enough to become dangerous themselves." Shame tightened around Jay's chest. Connor, she explained, desperately wanted escape during his final months. He became terrified after discovering certain police officers protected shipments moving through Liverpool docks. At first, he only gathered information to protect himself. Later he considered exposing everything publicly. He thought if enough truth came out, somebody important would finally stop it, Sandra said. Jay almost laughed bitterly. Instead, Connor ended up dead inside a burned apartment while newspapers called him another gang criminal. Sandra slowly stood and disappeared upstairs before returning with a small black notebook wrapped carefully inside plastic. "Connor hid this beneath floorboards," she said. Jay opened it cautiously. Inside were handwritten names, payment amounts, vehicle registrations, meeting locations, and coded notes connected to dock shipments. Some entries linked local businesses directly to drug operations. Others mentioned detectives beside large cash payments. "This could destroy people," Jay whispered. Sandra nodded weakly. "That's why Connor died." The weight of everything suddenly became unbearable. Connor was 17. Naomi Price likely dead. Ellie trapped between lies. And Jay himself helped feed the same criminal world now consuming everyone around him. For the first time, surrender almost sounded peaceful. "Maybe I should go police," he muttered. A voice behind him answered immediately. "No." Jay spun around violently. Kaz Doyle stood near the kitchen doorway wearing a dark coat soaked from rainwater. Sandra gasped softly but Kaz raised one calm hand. "I'm not here to hurt her." Jay's pulse raced. "How did you find me?" "You're predictable when guilt starts eating you." Kaz looked toward the notebook carefully. "If police get that, it disappears before sunrise." Jay wanted to argue but knew he was right. Naomi's recordings already proved detectives were compromised. Any official report could simply vanish while Jay became the next body blamed for everything. "You still trust the system too much," Kaz said quietly. Sandra suddenly looked terrified. Outside, a car door slammed somewhere beyond the house. Then another. Kaz's expression darkened instantly. "You need to leave now," he warned. Jay grabbed the notebook quickly while Kaz moved toward the front window. Headlights suddenly swept across the curtains outside. "Back door," Kaz ordered sharply. Sandra grabbed Jay's arm before he moved. "Make Connor matter," she whispered tearfully. Jay escaped through the rear alley moments before shouting erupted inside the house. He ran blindly through rain-covered streets until sirens finally echoed behind him nearly 20 minutes later. Hours afterward, hidden inside another abandoned building, Jay switched on a small radio beside him. The newsreader's voice sounded cold and detached. A woman identified as Sandra Wilkes was found murdered tonight inside her Bootle home following a suspected break-in. Jay closed his eyes in horror. Police also confirmed an unidentified item appears to have been stolen from the property. Sandra Wilkes' murder destroyed whatever illusions Jay Mercer still carried about innocence or survival. By dawn, every television station in Liverpool repeated the same story. Grieving mother killed during burglary investigation connected to gang violence. Police promised arrests. Politicians condemned crime publicly. Meanwhile, the Real killers disappeared untouched. Jay sat alone inside an abandoned storage unit near the docks with Connor's notebook resting beside him. Rainwater dripped steadily through holes in the roof while exhaustion hollowed his face further each hour. Then footsteps approached outside. Jay reached for the knife hidden beside his leg before Kaz Doyle stepped through the doorway slowly, hands visible. "You're getting jumpy," Kaz muttered. "You led them to Sandra." "No," Kaz replied coldly. "But someone followed me there." For several tense seconds neither man spoke. Months earlier they would have killed each other without hesitation. Now both understood the same truth. The gangs, corrupt detectives, and powerful men behind Liverpool's drug routes considered them expendable. Disposable pawns. Kaz noticed Connor's notebook immediately. "That's dangerous." "So am I now." A faint smile crossed Kaz's face before disappearing again. "There's a meeting tonight," he said. "Baltic District Warehouse. Senior people only." Jay narrowed his eyes. "How do you know?" "Because I used to protect those meetings." Silence settled heavily between them. Finally, Jay stood. "Then we go together." Night swallowed the Baltic district beneath freezing rain and industrial fog. Abandoned warehouses towered across empty streets while distant ship horns echoed from the River Mersey. The meeting location sat hidden behind rusted security gates near an old shipping depot. Floodlights sliced through darkness above the compound. Jay and Kaz watched from nearby rooftops as armed guards patrolled below with radios and flashlights. Expensive vehicles arrived one after another through guarded entrances. Men in suits stepped out beside gang enforcers carrying concealed weapons. "This isn't street business anymore," Jay whispered. Kaz nodded quietly. "Never was." Using old maintenance corridors known only to former security crews, they slipped inside through a rear steel entrance. The warehouse interior felt enormous and ghost-like. Water dripped steadily from ceiling pipes while machinery sat abandoned beneath dust sheets and shadows. Voices echoed faintly deeper inside. Jay followed Kaz carefully through narrow metal walkways overlooking the main floor below. Nearly 20 men gathered around folding tables covered with documents, cash bundles, and shipping manifests. One face immediately stood out. Detective Inspector Warren Hale. Jay felt sick seeing a senior police officer standing comfortably beside Liverpool gang figures. "They're all connected," he whispered. Below them, conversations continued. "The journalist is gone," one gangster said. "What about Mercer?" "We finish it tonight." Another voice answered calmly. "And the girl?" Jay froze instantly. Detective Hale adjusted his cuffs before speaking. "She cooperates until the child's born. After that, nobody risks loose ends." Rage exploded inside Jay's chest. Ellie was never safe. Neither was the baby. Kaz grabbed his arm tightly before he could move. "Listen first." Another gang leader opened Connor's notebook on the table below. "We recover every copy of these records before media gets involved. Witnesses disappear. Journalists disappear. Problem solved." Jay suddenly understood the true scale of the operation. Connor Hayes uncovered corruption stretching from Liverpool streets into police offices, shipping businesses, and political networks. Entire careers depended on burying the truth forever. Then movement below caught his attention. Ellie. She entered through a side doorway wearing a dark coat, visibly pale and exhausted. Two armed men escorted her toward the meeting tables while Detective Hale watched closely. Jay's heartbeat hammered violently. "She shouldn't be here," Kaz muttered. Ellie looked terrified. Her eyes scanned the warehouse nervously until suddenly they locked directly onto Jay hiding above. Shock crossed her face. Without warning, she broke away from the guards and sprinted toward the rear stairwell. "Jay!" she shouted desperately. Chaos erupted instantly below. Guards reached for weapons while gang leaders screamed orders across the warehouse. Jay rushed downward as Ellie collided into him halfway along the steel staircase. "You have to run," she gasped breathlessly. "They know about the notebook." "You lied to me." "I know." Tears filled her eyes immediately. "They threatened my family. They said they'd kill the baby too." Gunshots suddenly exploded somewhere below them. Kaz appeared beside the staircase firing toward advancing guards while alarms echoed throughout the warehouse. "Move!" he shouted. Floodlights swung wildly across steel corridors as armed men flooded the building. Jay grabbed Ellie's hand and followed Kaz through maintenance tunnels toward a rear loading exit. For one brief moment, escape seemed possible. Then a single gunshot cracked through the darkness behind them. Kaz stumbled violently forward. Jay turned in horror. One of Kaz's own longtime crew members stood near the loading bay entrance holding a smoking pistol. Blood spread rapidly across Kaz's chest while he collapsed against the concrete floor. The gunshot inside the Baltic warehouse didn't just drop Kaz Doyle, it shattered the fragile balance holding Liverpool's criminal world together. Within hours, everything collapsed. By dawn, leaked recordings from Naomi Price's memory card had already spread through journalists, anonymous accounts, and encrypted forums. Audio of bribed officers. Gang meetings. Financial routes through dock companies. Names that were never supposed to surface again now echoed across news broadcasts like a detonating bomb. Liverpool erupted. Police raids hit estates across Toxteth, Kensington, and Everton. Black vans flooded streets. Doors were kicked in before sunrise. But for every arrest made publicly, twice as many suspects vanished into the system quietly, erased, reassigned, or silenced before they could speak. Revenge followed faster than law. Gang alliances broke overnight. Former partners turned on each other, blaming rival crews for the exposure. Burned cars lined side streets. Shots echoed through industrial zones. No one trusted anyone anymore, not even inside the same families. And somewhere inside that chaos, Jay Mercer was running. He dragged Kaz through narrow drainage tunnels beneath the Baltic district, ignoring his groans of pain as helicopters roared overhead. Flashlights scanned rooftops while armed units moved through abandoned warehouses above them. Ellie stayed close behind, silent and shaking. Kaz's breathing grew heavier with every step. "Keep moving," Jay hissed. "I'm not making it far," Kaz muttered. "Then don't talk. Just walk." They reached a forgotten maintenance room beneath the docks, walls damp with seawater and rust. Jay forced the door shut and pressed his back against it while sirens lared the air outside. For a long moment, only Kaz's ragged breathing filled the space. Ellie crouched beside him, hands trembling over his wound. Blood soaked through his coat too quickly to stop. Jay stared at him, anger and confusion colliding. "Why did they shoot you?" he asked. Kaz let out a weak laugh. "Because I wasn't useful anymore." Silence fell. Outside, boots echoed somewhere in the tunnels. Search teams were closing in. Kaz turned his head slowly toward Jay. "There's something you don't know," he said faintly. "I'm done hearing lies. This one matters." Jay hesitated, then stayed still. Kaz coughed, blood spilling onto the concrete floor. "That night, your flat. The 5 men." Jay's chest tightened instantly. Kaz's eyes flickered with something heavier than guilt. "I was there." The words hit like a physical blow. Ellie looked up sharply. "You were part of it." Jay whispered. Kaz nodded slowly. "We were told you switched lines. That you were moving against us. The order came from above. Clean extraction. No witnesses." Jay's mind went blank. Clean extraction. Kaz swallowed painfully. 5 men. 1 location. Everyone inside removed before it spread. Jay's voice cracked. There was no one else in that flat. Kaz's expression darkened. "That's not what we were told." A long silence followed, broken only by distant sirens and dripping water. Then Kaz added something quieter. But the order wasn't about fear. It wasn't even about drugs. Jay's eyes narrowed. What are you talking about? Kaz struggled to breathe, every word costing him. You weren't supposed to be scared out. You were supposed to be erased. Ellie covered her mouth, shaking. Jay stepped back slowly, the truth collapsing around him in layers. So everything. Ellie. Naomi. Connor. Pieces of the same plan, Kaz whispered. Footsteps suddenly echoed closer outside the door. Search teams. Flashlights began cutting through cracks in the walls. Ellie grabbed Jay's arm urgently. We have to go now. But Jay didn't move. His mind was locked on one thing. Not betrayal. Not survival. Something worse. If Kaz was telling the truth, then the night his life fell apart was never about switching drug lines at all. It was about something he was never meant to survive. Ellie suddenly looked at her phone, face draining of color. It's gone, she whispered. What is? My phone, messages, everything. Jay snatched it from her hands. The screen showed no contacts, no history, nothing. Only one final outgoing message sent minutes earlier. From Ellie's number. To an unknown recipient. It contained just one line. I did it to save you. The message on Ellie's phone, I did it to save you, hung in the air like a warning no one could decode. Before Jay Mercer could ask what it meant, distant sirens swelled through the tunnels beneath the docks, growing louder with every second. They were out of time. Kaz Doyle pushed himself upright with visible pain, blood still soaking through his clothes. Ellie gripped Jay's arm tightly, her face pale with fear and exhaustion. They're closing the perimeter, Kaz muttered. If we stay here, we die. Jay didn't respond. His mind was still stuck between betrayal and truth, between Ellie's message and everything Kaz had just revealed. But survival moved faster than thought. They climbed through a narrow access tunnel that opened into the storm-lashed Liverpool docks. Rain hammered the shipping yard violently, turning metal containers into shifting shadows under flickering floodlights. The entire waterfront felt abandoned, except for the movement of armed men and emergency vehicles converging from every direction. Police raids had escalated into full containment. Across the docks, gang leaders were scrambling to escape with suitcases of cash, weapons crates, and encrypted drives containing evidence that could destroy entire networks. Boats were being prepared under panic. Deals were collapsing mid-conversation. Men who once controlled streets were now running like trapped animals. Jay stepped onto wet concrete, rain instantly soaking through his clothes. This is it, he said quietly. Kaz looked toward the main shipping lanes. No, he replied. This is the cleanup. Suddenly, gunfire echoed from the far side of the docks. Everything exploded into motion. Men in dark coats ran between containers while spotlights swept across the yard. Shouts mixed with thunder as the storm intensified overhead. Jay pulled Ellie behind a rusted crane while Kaz moved ahead, scanning the chaos with trained precision. We need Hale, Kaz said. Detective Hale. Ellie asked. He's the one who started all of this. Jay's jaw tightened. Connor's notebook. Naomi's recordings. Ellie's confession. Everything always circled back to the same network. And now it was collapsing violently in front of them. They moved through stacked containers toward the central loading platform where several senior figures were attempting to escape by speedboat. Among them, Jay spotted familiar faces from Sandra Wilkes' notebook, men tied to shipments, bribes, and Connor Hayes' final investigation. One of them saw Jay and pointed immediately. There! Gunfire erupted instantly. Jay dragged Ellie behind metal crates as bullets sparked against steel. Kaz returned fire from higher ground, moving with surprising strength despite his injury. You should have killed me when you had the chance. Kaz shouted toward the attackers. But instead of retreating, one of the gunmen turned his weapon toward Kaz directly. A single shot echoed across the docks. Kaz collapsed again, this time harder. Jay froze for a second. Ellie screamed. But Kaz raised one shaking hand. Go, he whispered. Finish it. Then he pulled the trigger on a nearby fuel line, igniting a burst of fire that forced the attackers back. The explosion bought seconds, just enough for Jay and Ellie to escape deeper into the shipping maze. They ran through narrow gaps between containers while alarms blared across the docks. Behind them, chaos swallowed everything Kaz had once controlled. Eventually, they reached a sealed office building overlooking the water. Inside, rain leaked through broken windows while monitors flickered weakly on emergency power. And there, waiting in the darkness, stood a man in a suit. Detective Inspector Warren Hale. He didn't move when they entered. "I expected you to survive," he said calmly. Jay raised his weapon. "You ruined everything." Hale smiled slightly. "No. I maintained order. Your world just got too loud." Ellie stepped forward suddenly. "You used me," she said. Hale tilted his head. "I protected you. There's a difference." Jay's voice shook with anger. "You killed Connor. Naomi. Sandra Wilkes." Hale didn't deny it. Collateral. Necessary silence. Rain hammered harder outside as thunder rolled across the docks. Then Hale said something that made Ellie stumble backward. "Your father agreed to the arrangement before he died. I only continued what was already in motion." Ellie's breath broke. Jay looked at her instantly. "What is he talking about?" Ellie's lips trembled. "I don't know." But Hale continued anyway. She was useful from the beginning. Emotional access. Close proximity. Perfect leverage over Mercer. Jay felt something snap inside him. "Everything," he whispered. "Even her." Before he could finish, a loud crash echoed from the corridor behind them. A backup drive system inside the office suddenly activated. Screens flickered on. Audio files began autoplaying. Naomi Price's recordings. Connor Hayes' hidden evidence. And something else. Ellie's voice. Hundreds of clips. Meetings. Calls. Conversations with detectives. Gang negotiations. Emotional breakdowns. Every moment secretly captured. Ellie stepped back in horror. "I didn't record all of that." But the system continued playing. More files loaded automatically. Hidden folders revealed under layers of encryption. Proof that Ellie had been recording everything for months. Not just survival. Not just fear. But a full archive capable of dismantling half of Liverpool's underworld. Months after the storm at the docks, Liverpool was no longer the city it used to be. It had been carved open. Ellie's recordings, every file, every hidden conversation, every corrupted exchange between gangs and police, spread through investigative networks like poison through water systems. Within weeks, arrests began. Not just street-level dealers, but officers, businessmen, and council-linked figures who had spent years hiding behind legitimate fronts. Detective Inspector Warren Hale was never officially confirmed dead or alive. He simply disappeared from all records after the first wave of inquiries. Resignations followed across Merseyside police. Public statements claimed internal restructuring. Politicians held press conferences denying knowledge of criminal infiltration while refusing to answer direct questions. Newspapers called it the biggest exposure of organized corruption in Liverpool's modern history. And then, just as quickly, everything fragmented. Witnesses changed stories. Evidence went missing. Entire case files were sealed under national security claims. Some gang members vanished entirely. Others turned informant overnight, trading names for survival. The system wasn't cleaned. It was reset. Jay Mercer didn't stay to watch it happen. He disappeared first. New identity. New documents. New city far away from the docks, the rain, and the sound of sirens that no longer meant anything specific but still triggered something deep in his chest. He worked simple jobs under false names. Avoided long conversations. Avoided mirrors when possible. Even normal life felt temporary, like something that could be taken away at any moment without warning. Sleep never fully returned. Even in quiet apartments, he would wake suddenly, convinced he heard footsteps outside. Even in daylight, he checked reflections in shop windows to make sure no one was following him. The past never stopped moving. Ellie's fate remained uncertain. Some reports claimed she had fled the country using offshore contacts tied to the leaked network. Others suggested she had entered witness protection under a new identity. No one confirmed anything. No photograph ever resurfaced. Only silence followed her name. Sometimes Jay tried not to think about her at all. Other times, he couldn't think about anything else. On rare nights, when exhaustion finally dragged him into shallow sleep, he would see flashes of the docks, Connor's notebook, Sandra's house, Naomi's broken car, and Kaz falling under floodlights that never seemed to turn off. Then he would wake up again. Alone. Far from Liverpool. Far from everything. Until one night, everything changed. It was late. The apartment was dark except for the glow of a small hallway light left on. Rain tapped gently against the window, steady and ordinary, like a city that had moved on without him. Jay sat on the edge of his bed, staring at nothing in particular, when he heard it. Knocking. At first, he thought it was the building settling. Then it came again. 5 slow knocks. Deliberate. Measured. Exactly the same rhythm as before.